What would be a logical reason to not excavate these fascinating ancient sites?
It's often because of funds, but it's also because of the feeling that as technology improves, more may be learnt from these sites in the future.
Something ancient is waking up under the North Caucasus, and it is not what you think. This underground structure is so advanced that it makes our modern buildings look like piles of dirt. The walls are carved with a precision that we cannot even match today. Scientists are not just confused, they're actually afraid of what this building was used for. It looks like a giant power plant, or a weapon from a forgotten war. And get this, the deeper you go, the more the air feels like it is vibrating with a strange, old energy. The Forgotten Mountain Abyss. The region is home to many different groups of people. Each group has its own way of talking and its own special stories. They have kept these stories alive for hundreds and hundreds of years. These folktales are not just about spirits or heroes. They talk about something much more strange. The old folks tell stories about secret tunnels that never end. They talk about caves that go so deep they reach the center of the earth. Some stories say that whole cities were built underground a long time ago. People supposedly lived there to hide from enemies. They would walk through dark passages that twisted through the mountain like snakes. Other stories describe long hallways made of stone that looked too perfect to be made by nature. They said these were made by builders who had tools that could cut through rock like butter. These stories were told around fires, on cold nights for many generations. Most people thought they were just myths, but a few people thought there was a real truth hidden under the rocks. But here's the catch. The stories were actually right about the tunnels. The landscape itself is a giant puzzle. Scientists have looked at the rocks for years, trying to figure out how they formed. But the deeper they look, the more they find things that do not fit. There are places where the mountain looks like it was cut into steps, like a giant staircase for a god. Some people believe that the Caucasus Mountains are not just mountains at all. They think these peaks might be the ruins of a much older world. These theories sound wild, but when you see the straight lines and the smooth surfaces, it is hard to say they are just rocks. Some hunters in the area have reported seeing strange lights near the peaks at night. They say the ground sometimes hums with a low sound that you can feel in your teeth. This has led to the theory that the mountains are actually hollow. If the mountains are hollow, then who or what is inside? The local stories often mention a race of giants who lived in these mountains before humans arrived. These giants were said to be masters of stone. They could pick up rocks the size of houses and move them without breaking a sweat. While modern science says giants never existed, the massive stone blocks found in the underground structure make you wonder. If humans did not move these stones, then someone else did, and the technology they used must have been incredible. We are talking about machines that could lift hundreds of tons and cut through granite like it was soft cheese. This leads to the most controversial theory of all. Some researchers believe that the Caucasus region was the site of an ancient spaceport. They think the tunnels were used to store energy or fuel for ships that came from other planets. This sounds like a science fiction movie, but the precision of the tunnels is so high that even our best engineers today struggle to explain how it was done thousands of years ago. The mountains are also famous for being very hard to map. Even with satellites, there are parts of the Caucasus that remain hidden. The weather changes in a heartbeat. One minute the sun is shining, and the next, a thick fog rolls in that hides everything. Some people believe this fog is not natural. They think it is a defense system designed to keep people away from the secret sites. There are stories of explorers who went into the woods and never came back. When their gear was found, it looked like they had just vanished into thin air. No footprints, no struggle, nothing. It is as if the mountain itself swallowed them whole. This has created a sense of fear among the locals. They respect the mountains, but they also fear what lies beneath them. They know that some places are not meant for human eyes. But despite the danger, the lure of the mystery is too strong. People continue to search for the entrance to the underground world. They look for clues in the old songs and the ancient carvings. Some of these carvings show strange figures with big heads and long fingers. They don't look like humans at all. This has sparked the theory that the original builders were not from Earth. They might have been visitors who used the mountains as a base. If this is true, then the tunnels are not just ruins. They might be part of an ancient laboratory or a communication center. The more you look into the history of Kabardino-Balkaria, the more the line between myth and reality starts to disappear. You start to see that the world we live in is just the surface. Underneath, there is a whole other history that we are only beginning to understand. Subterranean room. In the middle of the 20th century, people started to take these old stories more seriously. Scientists and explorers wanted to see if the underground cities were real. During the time of the Soviet Union, people searched the mountains for oil and gold. They mapped a lot of the area, but huge parts stayed a mystery. The locals kept talking about narrow holes that went straight down into the mountain. They said the stone blocks inside were aligned perfectly, like a giant brick wall. One man who heard these stories was named Arthur Jemukov. He was a Russian expert on caves. He had been obsessed with the underground world since he was a little boy. He spent his whole life looking for what was hidden beneath the surface of the earth. By the year 2011, he was known for being very brave. He would go into the most dangerous places where nobody else would dare to step. Jemukov was different from other scientists. He did not think the old stories were just made up. He thought they were like a map with clues. He also looked at old papers from the Second World War. He hoped to find notes about what the soldiers saw in the mountains. In the year 2011, he decided to look at a place called Mount Kurora. This was a lonely peak that most people ignored, but the villagers told him there was a vertical shaft there that made no sense. He also found out that German soldiers were looking at that same spot back in 1942. Jemukov knew there had to be something big there. He did not want to find just another hole in the dirt. He wanted to find proof of an ancient society that was smarter than us. He packed his climbing gear and got a team together. They knew the trip would be very hard. When they finally got to the rocky slope, they saw it. It was a narrow opening in the stone that was hidden by green plants. It was not a big hole, but it went straight down into the dark. Most caves are messy and rough, but this one was smooth. It looked like someone had carved it on purpose. And get this, the shaft was as tall as a 12-story building. Going down into that shaft was like stepping into a freezer. The temperature dropped so fast that the team's breath turned into clouds. The walls were so close together that they felt like they were being hugged by the mountain. But the most unsettling thing was the perfection. As they slid down the ropes, their lights hit the walls and showed zero flaws. There were no cracks, no bumps, and no natural layers of rock. It looked like the stone had been melted and poured into a mold. This led Jemukov to think about something called acoustic levitation. This is a theory that ancient people used sound waves to lift and shape heavy stones. If you hit the right frequency, the stone becomes light as a feather. This would explain how they moved the massive blocks and how they cut the walls so smoothly. It sounds crazy, but how else do you explain a hole this deep and this perfect in the middle of a rugged mountain? As they reached the 60-foot mark, the air started to feel different. It wasn't just cold, it felt heavy, like it was full of static electricity. Their hair stood up on their arms. Some members of the team felt a strange ringing in their ears. This has led some people to believe that the shaft is not just a hole, but a giant antenna. If the structure is made of certain types of crystals or minerals, it could be picking up signals from deep space or from the Earth's core. This would mean the prehistoric builders were using the mountain to communicate or to harvest energy. Imagine a world where the mountains were actually giant machines, humming with power. That is the kind of reality Jemukov was starting to believe in. He felt like he was trespassing in a place that was still somewhat alive. When they finally hit the bottom, they weren't in a small cave. They were in a massive hall. Their lights couldn't even reach the far walls, at first. As they walked around, they realized the room was shaped like a giant box. The corners were exactly 90 degrees. In nature, you never see a 90-degree angle. Nature likes curves and messy lines. But here, everything was math. This room was a giant geometry lesson. This led to the theory that the room was a vault. But what was it protecting? There were no gold coins or jewels. There were no mummies or scrolls. It was just empty. But some people think it wasn't always empty. They believe the room once held a power source, like a giant crystal or a nuclear reactor from thousands of years ago. When the builders left, they took the technology with them, leaving behind only the massive stone shell. The blocks in the wall were the most confusing part. They were stacked with such precision that you couldn't even fit a razor blade between them. This is the same technique used in the pyramids of Egypt and the ruins of Peru. It is called megalithic architecture, but the Russian site is much older. This suggests that there was a global civilization that existed before the Ice Age. This society knew how to work with stone in ways we still don't understand. They didn't use mortar or glue. They just fit the stones together so perfectly that they became one solid piece. This theory suggests that history is much older than we are taught in school. We are taught that humans were hunters and gatherers 10,000 years ago. But the Kurora shaft suggests they were engineers and architects. It flips everything we know upside down. The crazy part is, this place has a dark history with the most evil group in history, Operation Edelweiss. When people heard about this shaft, they started comparing it to the pyramids in Egypt. The way the stones were cut looked exactly like the work of the ancient Egyptians. People wondered if the same builders traveled to Russia. This would change everything we know about the past. Some experts think the shaft was a giant vent for air. Others think it was built to control sound or energy. There's even a theory that the whole mountain is actually a buried pyramid. But the mystery gets even weirder when you look at what happened during the Second World War. In the 1930s, the Nazi leaders were obsessed with magic and old myths. A man named Heinrich Himmler started a secret group to find lost worlds. They searched all over the world for a place called Shambhala. They believed it was a hidden kingdom underground with super technology. In 1942, the German army sent a special team to the Caucasus Mountains. They said they were there for oil, but they spent a lot of time looking at the peaks. People found carvings of swastikas on the rocks near the entrance of the shaft. Nobody knows exactly why they were there. Some people think the Nazis found the shaft and tried to get inside. They wanted to find a weapon or power that would help them win the war. The swastika is an old symbol that meant life and energy long before the Nazis used it. It has been found in many ancient sites. This makes people think the mountain was a holy or important place for a very long time. It is a place where ancient builders and modern soldiers both looked for secrets. The Nazis were not just looking for oil. They were looking for a way to live forever. They believed that the ancient inhabitants of the Caucasus were a super race with secret knowledge. There are rumors of a secret German map that shows a whole network of tunnels under the mountains. This map supposedly leads to a giant underground lake where the air is always warm and the plants never die. Some people think this is where the Nazis hoped to hide if they lost the war. They imagined an underground empire that nobody could ever reach. While this sounds like a crazy story, the fact that the SS spent so much time and money in this specific area is very strange. They weren't just soldiers, they were archaeologists and occultists. They were looking for something they called the Vril power. This was supposed to be a type of energy that could control gravity and light. There is a wild theory that the Kurora shaft was actually a gateway to this Vril energy. The Nazis believed that if they could tap into the mountain's power, they could build flying saucers and invincible weapons. Some locals claim that during the war, the mountains would glow with a weird blue light at night. They heard explosions that didn't sound like bombs. They sounded like the earth cracking open. This has led to the idea that the Nazis actually found something deep inside the shaft and tried to take it. But the mountain fought back. There are stories of German platoons that went into the caves and never came out. When their bodies were found, they had no marks on them, but their hair had turned white from fear. It is as if they saw something so terrifying that their hearts just stopped. The swastika found on the peak might have been a warning. In ancient times, that symbol was used to mark sacred ground. It told people to stay away because the area belonged to the gods. If the Nazis ignored that warning, they might have triggered an ancient defense system. Some researchers believe that the underground structure is still guarded today, not by soldiers, but by a type of artificial intelligence or a spiritual force left behind by the builders. This would explain why so many electronic devices fail when they get near the shaft. Cameras stop working, and flashlights flicker out. The mountain seems to want to stay a secret. It has protected itself for thousands of years, and it is not going to give up its secrets easily. After the war, the Soviet government kept the area closed for a long time. They didn't want anyone poking around. This led to the theory that the Soviets found what the Nazis were looking for. Some people think the Soviet Union used the underground chambers to conduct secret experiments. They might have tried to reverse engineer the ancient technology. This would explain why there is so much silence around the site today. If the government has a secret weapon based on prehistoric science, they aren't going to tell the world about it. The Kurora shaft might be the most important site on Earth, and yet it is one of the least studied. The silence is deafening. But here's the deal. The more we learn, the more the scientists want to stay away. Geology gone wrong. The scientific community is deeply divided over the Kurora shaft. On one side, you have the traditionalists. They say it is just a natural formation. They claim that water over millions of years carved the shaft in the room. But this explanation is full of holes. Water doesn't carve straight lines and 90-degree angles. It doesn't create smooth, polished walls. And it certainly doesn't stack 200-ton blocks in a perfect pattern. The traditionalists are forced to ignore the physical evidence because it doesn't fit their books. This has led to a lot of frustration among younger researchers who want to know the truth. They see the fear in the eyes of the old professors when the subject of Kurora comes up. It's a fear that their whole life's work might be wrong. If the structure is man-made, it means we have to rewrite every history book. It means that there was a global civilization that was destroyed by a giant flood or a comet thousands of years ago. This theory is known as the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. It suggests that around 12,000 years ago, the Earth was hit by fragments of a giant comet. This caused massive fires, followed by a sudden ice age and giant floods. Any advanced society living at that time would have been wiped out. The only things that would survive are massive stone structures deep underground. This would mean the Kurora shaft is a time capsule. It is a message from a world that was much smarter than we give them credit for. They were trying to tell us that they were here, and that we are not the first ones to master the Earth. The architecture itself is a nightmare for geologists. They look at the blocks, and they see basalt and granite. These are some of the hardest rocks on Earth. To cut them with such precision, you would need diamond-tipped saws or high-powered lasers. But ancient people were supposed to have only copper chisels and stone hammers. You cannot cut a 200-ton granite block with a copper chisel. It is physically impossible. This leads to the theory of ancient high technology. Some believe the builders used a type of sonic drill that turned the rock into dust. Others think they used chemicals to soften the stone so it could be molded like clay. When the stone hardened again, it became as solid as a mountain. This would explain the seamless joints between the blocks. They weren't just stacked, they were fused together. This technology is what truly terrifies scientists. If ancient people had this kind of power, what happened to it? Why did they lose it? And if they were so advanced, why didn't they stop the disaster that destroyed them? It makes us realize how fragile our own society is. We think we are the masters of the world because we have smartphones and airplanes. But if a giant comet hit us today, all our technology would be gone in a few decades. Thousands of years from now, future explorers might find our subway tunnels and wonder who built them. They might think we were gods because we could dig so deep through the rock. The Kurora shaft is a mirror showing us our own future if we aren't careful. It is a reminder that greatness can be lost in an instant. There is also the theory of the hollow earth. Some people believe that the shaft is just one of many entrances to a world inside our own. They think the earth is not solid rock all the way through. Instead, it is like a giant shell with a whole ecosystem inside. They think the sun at the center of the earth provides light and heat. This inner world is where the prehistoric builders went to escape the surface disasters. They believed that if you could get past the defense systems in the Kurora shaft, you would find a path that leads all the way down to this hidden world. While this sounds like a story from a fantasy book, the fact that the shaft is so deep and so well protected makes people wonder, why build a doorway if there is nothing on the other side? The fear also comes from the unknown energy at the site. Some researchers who visited the shaft reported feeling a sense of dread that they couldn't explain. It wasn't just being in a dark hole, it was a physical feeling of being watched. They had nightmares for weeks after leaving the mountain. Some people believe that the stone itself is programmed with a type of psychic energy. The builders might have left a mental footprint that still affects people today. This has led to the idea that the site is haunted, not by ghosts of people, but by the memory of a civilization that died in pain. The mountain is a giant grave for a whole era of human history. And when you step inside, you are stepping into a funeral that has been going on for 10,000 years. The more you study the Kurora shaft, the more you realize that it doesn't want to be understood. Every time a scientist thinks they have an answer, a new piece of evidence shows up that ruins it. It is a masterpiece of confusion. It challenges our logic, our science, and our sense of who we are. It is a mountain that says no to every theory we throw at it. It is the ultimate mystery, and it is sitting right there in the middle of Russia, waiting for someone brave enough to solve it. But the mystery doesn't end with the rocks. It's about what happened to the people who tried to find the truth. The unanswered call of the earth. Today, the work at the shaft has mostly stopped. You would think every scientist in the world would be there, but they are not. There are no official maps or new reports. This silence is the most terrifying part. It is like someone decided the truth was too big for the public to know. The only things we have are some photos and the stories of the people who went down there. The photos show shapes that are too perfect to be natural. Some people say it is just a strange rock formation, but they cannot explain the smooth walls or the 200-ton blocks. The mystery lives on the internet now. People talk about it on forums and share the limited data we have. If this place is man-made, it is the biggest discovery in human history. It would mean that a super advanced society lived in Russia long before the first kings of Egypt. They would have had machines and tools that we can barely imagine. They built things that lasted for thousands of years deep inside the earth. We have to wonder who they were and where they went. Did they leave because of a disaster, or are they still down there in even deeper rooms we haven't found yet? The mountain keeps its secrets for now. Whether it is a gift from nature or a building from a lost world, it reminds us that we don't know everything about our home. The earth is full of mysteries that are waiting to be found. The shaft at Mount Kurora is a giant question mark in the middle of the mountains. It makes us feel small, and it makes us wonder about our true history. What do you think is hiding in that Russian mountain? Is it an ancient power plant, a Nazi bunker, or an entrance to a hollow Earth? This mystery is truly mind-blowing, and we need your help to solve it. Tell us your theories in the comments. Make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown.